everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Ashley and today I'm going to be doing what has become a bit of a theme for me, and that is an overdue update. Today we're going to be talking all about my Pan Those Eyeshadows project pan. I've been doing this project for a number of years now and I absolutely adore it, and it was of course created by Alexy. I am currently working on 5 eyeshadows in this project with the ultimate goal of hitting pan. However, if I've used the shadow 30 times and I still haven't hit pan, then I am giving myself the option to go ahead and roll it on out. So let's go ahead and talk about the shadow that's been in this project so far the longest, and that comes from my Lime Crime Venus XL2 palette. I'm working on the shade Locust. It is this shade right here. And I feel like you can hardly even see a dent or a dip in here, even though I have used it quite a few times in the course of the project. In the course of the project, I've actually used this 20 times so far, and it just looks brand new. So I haven't fully decided if I'm going to commit to the 30 uses or if I'm just gonna go ahead and roll it out, because I just haven't been feeling terribly inspired to use this palette. Honestly, I've been trying to dip into some of the palettes that have been very much neglected in my collection because I've been feeling like I need to do a declutter, but I don't want to just like willy-nilly declutter stuff. So some of the palettes that I haven't used in a while or that I'm kind of on the fence about, I've been trying to use those a little bit, and I haven't been feeling this one lately, so we'll see. The next shadow that I'm working on is from Odin's Eye. This is the Freya palette, and I'm working on the shade Tor. That is this beautiful matte orange right here, and I hope you can tell, but I do have pan, which is very, very exciting. So I did use this shade an additional 6 times for a total of, what is this? 17 times in the course of the project. So I wasn't thinking that these were too terribly deep, and they are a little bit on the powdery side, but this was an intensely bright orange. So even though these feel like a little bit more shallow pans and they are a little bit more powdery, a little bit goes a long, long way. So I had a lot of fun working with it, but I'm glad to be moving on to something else at this point. The next shadow that I am working on in this project is from my Fenty Moroccan Spice palette, and the shade itself is called Spice Trip. It is this shade right here, which you can see some pan in it as well, which is very exciting. So that's 2 pans so far in this update, which feels really, really good. I used this shade an additional 10 times in order to hit pan, and I actually used it 20 times throughout the course of this project. So I was right on the cusp of that 30 usage mark, which is honestly why I have that in there, because I figure if I use a shade 30 times, then I'm either almost at pan or it's just not gonna happen. So I'm very happy to say those 2 have pan in them. The next shadow that I'm working on is from my BH Cosmetics Lost in Los Angeles palette, which I absolutely adore. The shade I'm working on is this shade right here called The Hills. I don't know if you, oh, that's a bit of a decent shot. It's probably a little bit washed out, but I do have a fairly sizable dip going in there as well. I have actually used it 19 times since our last update for a total of 25 times in the course of this project. However, while I have used it all over my lid, more often than not, I tend to use it as an inner corner highlight, which is why I have so many usages on a BH Cosmetics shadow, but still no pan. I really enjoy using it in this way, so I'm not mad about it, but definitely it's a surprise to have used it 25 times and not be closer to pan, if that makes sense. And then the final shade that I am working on is from my Beauty Bay Cosmetics Wilderness palette. This is one of my very favorite shadows in all of my collection, eyeshadow palettes in all of my collection. And the shade that I'm working on is called Marigold. It is this one right here. And we have our 3rd pan of this update, which is exciting. Now, let's be honest, it's been a little while since I've had an update, so I've got a little bit of extra usages on here, but that's fine. I used this shade an additional 8 times in the course of this project for a total of 15 uses over its time in this project, so feeling really, really good about that. So what that means is that we get to roll for a new eyeshadow palette. Now, I will be very honest, I have not updated my spreadsheet in probably 6 months, so not every eyeshadow palette that I own is on here, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because some of my brand new palettes I don't necessarily want to try to drill down and hit pan on, and I want to use them in a little bit more of an organic way, but we're just going to go with it. So in my Pretty Random app, I do have all of my variables in there. I've got lines 2 through 2264, and we're going to roll 3 new shades. All right, 1989, 1181, and 1803. Okay, I'm gonna see what that correlates to, and then we'll come back and we'll talk all about it. All right, so let's talk about how the universe has a sense of humor. So the first one that I rolled is number 1989, and that comes from my Juvia's Place Nubian 2. And the shade that corresponds to is the shade Jezebel. This really pretty kind of plummy, grapey matte shade. 1803 corresponds to my Natasha Denona Star Palette, and the shade that it pulls is the shade Electra. Right there. The last that I rolled is 1803, which is my mini Lila palette, and you guessed it, that corresponds to Poison Berry. That shade right there. So somehow in over 2,000 pans of potential eyeshadow, I got 3 that look exactly alike. What are the odds? I can't believe that they are favorable in that regard. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kick out these 2 right here, and the reason for that is that I'm honestly on the fence about whether or not I want to keep this palette here, and I feel like having it in this project will allow me to get some more uses out of it to determine whether or not I want to keep it or not. I mean, with that being said, this is a stunning palette, absolutely gorgeous. I just don't reach for it overly often. Is that because I spend all of my time panning? Perhaps. So I'm gonna keep Jezebel in, and we're gonna roll 2 new pans of eyeshadow. So 97 and 286. I'll be right back. All right, so that went much better this time around. So the palette that shade 286 comes from is my Too Faced Chocolate Bonbons palette, and I'm really excited that this has been pulled into this project because it's another one that I haven't used in a really long time, and I've kind of had my eye on for possible declutter. So by putting it into this project, that is really going to help in that regard. The shade that we are going to be working on is this shade right here called Cafe au Lait, and I'm very interested to see how I get on with it. And then the last shade, number 97, comes to us from one of my very favorite palettes of all times in the entirety of my collection, still after all these years, the top of the top in my book, and that is my Sydney Grace Autumn's Rain palette. I absolutely love this palette. In fact, Wondrous Night, honestly, one of the most beautiful eyeshadows that I own, period. Love it. Not the shade I'm working on though. The shade that I'm going to be working on is this one right here called Nature's Crown. Just a really easy sort of warm mid-tone brown, and I think it'll be really, really helpful. So this is the color story that we are working with. Starting here on the end, this is Locust, then we have the Hills, we have Jezebel, we have Cafe au Lait, and Nature's Crown. The Hills and Cafe au Lait, I think on camera, are looking very, very similar. And they kind of are, but I think they're nuanced enough that I think it'll be okay. So the Hills definitely has kind of a pinky purpley undertone flip to it. I cannot talk today. I'm so sorry. So it'll pair really beautifully with Jezebel, whereas Cafe au Lait has more of a silvery taupey sort of feel to it. Hopefully they won't look the same on the eye, and I'm confident that I can wear them in ways that don't, but we'll see in the next check-in how that goes. So there we have it. Oh, and I did want to note, because I've had this comment a couple of times, that in this project, I incorporated into the No Pan Left Behind challenge. So I definitely try to use every shadow in the palette prior to rolling it out of this project, because I definitely don't want my palettes to be like brand new pan, brand new. You know, I'm trying to incorporate as many of the shadows as I can while I have these on my desk. So I did just kind of want to throw that out there, that I am definitely excited when I can create looks that pull multiple shadows from this project into it. However, I do try to create looks that incorporate the entirety of the palette, not just the shades that I'm working on. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, if you have not yet subscribed, I hope that you'll consider doing so. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I hope that you're having an amazing day, and I will see you next time. Bye.